President of Congress. As soon as its contents were ascertained, it was determined that the paper should be publicly read to the citizens forthwith. The legislature had adjourned, but the Committee of Safety were in session. The tidings circulated through the town with lightning rapidity. Men, women, and children dropped their employments and gathered about the courthouse to listen to the words that make them free. John Taylor Gilman was chosen for the signal honor of reading for the first time in the capital of the state the Charter of American Freedom. As soon as his hastily gathered audience had assembled, the youthful reader began his grateful task. We can imagine with what bated breath all listened for the first time to that impressive statement of the causes which led America to take up arms. The clear tones in which the eloquent periods were enunciated never faltered until the masterly climax was reached, when the rush of patriotic feeling became too great for speech, and for a moment the reader was compelled to pause to regain the power of utterance. Often, as the Charter of our Liberties has been since repeated in Exeter in times of national trial and of national prosperity, it was never listened to with more devout thankfulness, greater faith, or more honest pride than on this, its first reading. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind required that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed to the light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial for punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress Assembly, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Or is it? Unfortunately, it's always been around. Yeah. Even then, they're probably... Mike? Up the path or straight up here?
Let's go to the right. Maybe we make these people in the dressing room. All right. Take care. Halt. To the right. Face.
So, firing squad? Yes. Tie him to that stake. I'll show you a little bit of how they drilled with the musket back during the American Revolution. The provincial forces were using the same musket drill as the British regulars were. And it was called the 1764 Manual of Arms. We're gonna show you a little bit of some of the musket maneuvers and the positions that you could hold the musket in. The idea behind all of this is that any commander on the field wanted his men to be, pretty fluid in how they went through the maneuvers, so that if he asked them to do something on the field, he had confidence that they knew exactly what they were doing. So that's the whole idea behind all the drilling. Mike. So he's gonna take them through some of the positions of the musket first.
All right. You ready? Rest your firelocks. Shoulder your firelocks. Rest your firelocks. Order your firelocks. Rest your firelocks. Shoulder your firelocks. Advance your firelocks. Shoulder your firelocks. Support your firelocks. Shoulder your firelocks. Trail your firelocks.
Hang on for a second. So this position that he's in right now, you literally would go to this position if you were going to go into the woods over a trail, or if you were running across a battlefield. It's much easier to run holding the musket like this. They had to make sure they kept the barrel up so they wouldn't be aimed at the person in front of them.
Shoulder your firelocks. Poise your firelocks. Shoulder your firelocks. Okay. Slope your firelocks.
This is a kind of a casual position that they would use if they were on the march. This position of at the shoulder your firelock, is what is mostly used on the march, or if you're standing still. This position allowed the muscles on your left side to breathe a little bit, give them a break, and then he would go back to
shoulder your firelocks.
You just bring it up straight again. The one of the positions where he went to poise, which is like this, you would go to poise if an officer was coming down to inspect the muskets, and we do this as reenactors as part of our safety check. When we are at poise, we are supposed to be half cocked. That means it cannot be fired. They're going to check that the flint is in there tightly, the trigger can't be pulled, and that as reenactors, we have these leather hammer stalls on, which keeps it from firing. The flint cannot hit the steel as long as this leather cover is on. So this poise position is used quite frequently at the beginning and the ends of events. They're going to go through the firing procedure now and show you how to fire these muskets.
Muskets, 3 paces to the forward, march. Muskets. To the right, wheel. To the front, march. Take care. Pop. To the left, wheel. Is this good? All right. Right that way. Over the flag. All right. We're going to do prime and load by the numbers.
So this priming and loading procedure is a multi-step process. He's going to take them step by step through the priming and loading process. And then after that, instead of going step by step, he'll let them go at their own pace.
Prime and load by the numbers. Prime and load. Fire up. Open pen. Handle your cartridge.
They should pull the cartridge out, open it up, and have it ready under their chin.
Prime. Shut your pen. Cast about. Charge with cartridge.
Back during the day, if this was live firing, the last thing that would go down the barrel is an actual musket ball. We obviously don't do that.
Shoulder your firelocks. Make ready. Present, complete, right. Fire. Go up here. All right, keep it up. Prime and load.
There are many ways that these muskets can misfire, okay? You'll notice just now 2 of them went off, 1 did not. You can have no...
Firelocks.
Give me 1 second. You can have a misfire when the flint hits the steel but doesn't produce a spark that will set off the charge in here in the priming pan. You can also have the priming pan charge go off but not go through the tiny touch hole that goes inside the barrel, and that is called, anybody? A flash in the pan. That's where that term originally comes from. Lock, stock, and barrel. We got a million of them. So anyways, you just saw one of the misfires, and it looked to me like he got no spark.
Shoulder your firelocks. Make ready. Present, oblique, right. Fire.
And again, 2 for 3.
Prime and load.
Anybody got an extra cartridge?
You got extra cartridge.
Oh yeah. I forgot I was wearing my cartridge glove. Jerry owes me for whacking my leg.
Oh, yeah. Get it back, get it back. Shoulder your firelocks. Make ready. Present. Oblique right. Fire. Shoulder your firelocks.
I got a flash in the pan. I'm waiting for this.
All right.
No, I guess it fired. I think.
Okay. It sounded like we all went off. All right. I had a good view of it. So, let's,
Does anybody have any questions about the drill? No? No curious folks? Yes? Oh, in battle, it gets very chaotic. And we're only in fake battles as reenactors. Yeah, in the heat of battle, you're stumbling, people are yelling, you've got guns going off everywhere, you've got smoke. No, they wouldn't have been waiting. Usually the command would be, prime and load or fire at will, which means you're going to prime and load on your own. It really does depend on the event, the battle, the type of battle. Is it an open field? Are you taking cover behind trees and walls? Everybody knows that when the Revolutionary War broke out, you've probably heard that the provincial troops hid behind walls and trees. Well, it's funny because they learned that during the French and Indian War. These guys over here knew that as well, and they continued to walk out in the open. Yes? The traditional clothing that we would wear as militia and Minuteman units, yes. We wore our own civilian clothing. We didn't have uniforms. Later, after the Continental Army was formed, they were outfitted with uniforms and they were drilled and trained constantly. And they were a different sort of soldier. These, we were called citizen soldiers, sort of the precursor to today's National Guard. And yes, we would have brought our own clothing, our own civilian clothing.
that's why we don't match.
That's why none of us match, yes. Now, in point of fact, I'm cheating. I have my shirt with my sleeves rolled up. I should be wearing a heavy wool coat. That's what they wore. And they didn't cheat. They sometimes drop dead once in a while, but I didn't feel like doing that today. I don't want to be that authentic. But it was customary to wear a sleeved coat when you went out in public, and that included going into battle. Once in a blue moon, they would skip that if the commander was smart enough and it was hot. He could say, leave your coats back in camp. It didn't happen all that often. Are there any other questions? Yes?
It's true that the muskets were highly inaccurate and that the volley fire was meant as a way to sort of mitigate that?
Yes, the accuracy of the muskets. I wouldn't say they were highly inaccurate. Let's put it this way. I don't know if you can see that square farmer's market sign across the street. That's a perfect thing for me to aim for. I could probably hit that from this range, but I might not, because the musket balls are going up the barrel. It's not rifled, it's a smooth barrel. So that musket ball is going to come out without a spin like modern bullets do, and it's going to come out maybe at that angle or going up. The musket balls also were not perfectly spherical, so it would be like a pitcher in a baseball game throwing a curveball. It might literally sail in one direction or another. So were they inaccurate? Yes. But were they terribly inaccurate? They still had a pretty good velocity, and depending on the range, they could probably hit their target. Maybe not a man-sized target. So that dictated that the armies showed up in long lines and just threw a wall of lead across the field, and they were bound to hit somebody. That's how the battles were fought back then. Good question. Any other questions?
They're small arms. Were there any small, like rifle or pistols rather?
There were, but not on the battlefield per se. They would have been carried maybe by cavalry soldiers and officers, or other type officers. They were also flintlock, and they were even less accurate because the barrel was only that long. All right, bring them up.
Firelocks. Shoulder your firelocks. To the front. March.
Left, wheel, front. Thank you, everybody. We're the Acton Minutemen.